and secluded. But beyond the tangle and the weeds, a secret was about to be discovered.
We weren't ready for this.
The sirens in my head, red lights going off in my head.
The discovery would tell the tale of an all-American family torn apart and a twisted loyalty hard to comprehend.
It was like hitting a brick wall and life just stopped.
This is the ultimate story of betrayal.
Yes.
Pittsford, New York, a pretty suburb of Rochester. Big houses, big families, and top-ranked schools that make the people who move here want to stick around.
In this community, you grow up in a bubble. This is the community is a bubble.
Well, good morning. Happy to be here. We got a lot of great folks with us here today. We're honored to have, as the Director General of the Taiwan Economic and Cultural Office in Miami, Director General Chi. Where are you? Right here. Thank you. We also have Yale Huang, President of the Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce of Miami. Do we have Charles Pan? Where's Charles? Board Member, Global Taiwan Institute. Sarah Ling Shin Chen, Director, Taipei Economic and Cultural Office. Are you up here? Where are you at? You were back there. Oh, yeah, there you are. We got other folks from the Cultural Office. We have Madeline Wu, former president, Formosan Association for Public Affairs in South Florida. I'm trying to think. Bill Hobbs is here. Bill, are you here? Thank you. Senator Manny Diaz, Representative Mike Beltran, Representative Vance Alupis. Is Demi Cabrera here? Where are you? Oh, hi. Good to see you. Representative Bush, Fabricio. Is Ileana here? I didn't see her. Okay. Representative Daniel Perez, Alex Rizzo. We have Speaker Chris Sprouse here, Lieutenant Governor, and our current Congressman, Carlos Jimenez. So thank you for coming. Hopefully you can whip that place up into shape a little bit because it needs a lot of help. We're here today to sign two important pieces of legislation into law, and the goal of these bills is to combat nefarious foreign influence and corporate espionage in Florida. If you look at what's gone on now with the coronavirus pandemic and the cover-up of the origins of COVID-19, it's pretty clear that this was a virus that almost assuredly leaked out of this lab in Wuhan. This is a lab where these scientists were working very closely with the Communist Party of China as well as the Chinese military. When you had these folks fall ill who were working in that lab last fall, the Communist Party of China decided to cover it up. They didn't give any information out. They didn't ask for any assistance. They didn't give a heads up to anybody. They tried to cover it up, and basically the world has had to endure over a year and a half of a lot of bad stuff as a result of this. So they covered it up, and they need to be held accountable for this. But I also think if you look at what's happened since then, it's pretty clear that if you go back last year at the beginning of 2020, January, February, there were people scurrying around, and you see this in Fauci's emails, to try to cover up the fact that this may have gone out of a lab. You actually had people saying there's no way it could have come out of the lab, when privately they were acknowledging it very well likely did come out of the lab. And so I think what this has exposed is you do have relationships between a lot of these institutions in China, particularly in the research realm, and bureaucrats in the United States. You have a whole bunch of other institutions. And so our bills today focus on foreign influence writ large. It absolutely, the 7 countries that are identified specifically, of course, the Communist Party of China, but yes, Communist Cuba, Venezuela, all those, and it's all very important. But I think if you look right now, there is no single entity that exercises a more pervasive, nefarious influence across a wide range of American industries and institutions than the Communist Party of China. Academia in the United States is permeated with influence, and I'll go through some of the people. You have researchers getting indicted. This is very common to see researchers at major institutions, including in Florida and also around the country, getting indicted for being in cahoots with the Chinese government. You look at corporate media and the entertainment industry in this country, they are in the pocket of the Communist Party of China. I mean, if Hollywood comes up with a movie that the CCP doesn't like, that gets censored. They are not going to run afoul of that orthodoxy. You look at corporate media in this country, they were on the vanguard of trying to suppress the truth about the lab leak theory. They've got deep financial ties to the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party, and we just have to call it for what it is. Big tech also runs interference for the Communist Party of China. You know, people were trying to search for the Tank Man in Tiananmen Square on Bing recently, and it had no results came up. That's very curious. Microsoft said, oh, it was just an oversight, it was a mistake or whatever. Really, that's a pretty convenient mistake to have. But you see time and time again, the big tech giants, it seems like when they put their thumb on the scale, they're almost always putting their thumb on the scale in favor of protecting the Communist Party of China. And of course, in the United States, major celebrities, athletes, and business leaders will frequently virtue signal regarding the latest crusade or cause du jour that they have about things in the United States, and yet almost every one of them falls silent when it comes to calling out the atrocities committed by the Chinese Communist Party. And so all we are doing today is saying enough is enough. We've got to start fighting back. And so the state of Florida is doing that. If you look at the bad influence that we see, we've seen it here in Florida. Just in February, a University of Florida researcher was indicted for taking grant money from UF for his company in China. September 2020, Jacksonville woman pled guilty for trying to illegally export engines to China. February 2020, Illinois court awarded Motorola $764 million in a case after an engineer stole thousands of confidential documents and millions of lines of code to benefit a Chinese company. September 2019, a University of Kansas researcher collected federal grant money while working full-time for a Chinese university. Of course, you see Iran and other countries as well. But I think here, as of now, as of the beginning of this past year, the FBI is investigating 1,000 cases of theft of U.S. technology. And this is almost always theft that's designed to serve the interests of the Chinese Communist Party. So we don't have to look long and far to see examples of this. I don't think they get the attention they deserve. And clearly, a lot of folks in Washington need to do more to be able to combat it. But in Florida, we're going to take a stand. And so we are taking a stand, and these bills I'm signing into law today, foreign adversaries will not have access to our schools, government, and companies like they have in the past. Not the Communist Party of China, not Russia, not Cuba, not North Korea, not Iran, not Syria, not Venezuela. In fact, the first bill that I signed today safeguards our public institutions from undue foreign influence, and that means prohibiting agreements between public entities and the Communist Party of China or Cuba or any of these other malignant forces. And so as of the time we sign this bill and it goes into effect, Florida, we will be banning things like Confucius institutions from being in our universities or in our colleges. And I know we had issues with that right here in Miami-Dade County, so it's the right thing to do. But beyond prohibiting direct deals with these adversarial governments, the bill also makes sure we don't make deals with private companies that are closely tied to these foreign adversaries. And the bill also makes sure all nation states, corporations, organizations, and individuals seeking to engage with colleges and universities are fully vetted. We don't want bad actors involved in our colleges and university, and we'll hold you accountable if you run afoul of these new laws. We're also going to sign the Combating Corporate Espionage in Florida Act. It creates new criminal offenses in Florida for the theft and trafficking of trade secrets. Anyone who willfully and without authorization steals or attempts to steal a trade secret and use it for their own benefit will now face a third-degree felony punishable by up to 5 years in prison. If the same person tries to sell the stolen trade secret, they'll face a second-degree felony with even more penalties. And finally, if an individual entity violates this law on behalf of a foreign government, the penalties are significantly enhanced, adding even more time in prison. So I want to thank Speaker Sprowls. I want to thank the representatives and senators here for their attention to this. We knew that we needed to stand up. We knew that we needed to start taking a stand against this because it's really gotten out of hand. And I really hope that we're going to have accountability for the origins of the COVID pandemic, because this did not need to happen. And yes, the Chinese Communist Party is primarily to blame. But there's also American money that very well may have flowed into Wuhan. There were U.S. bureaucrats who were involved at a minimum of trying to divert attention away from the true origins. And so all of those folks need to be held accountable. And I do think China, what we're doing here as a state level is important, it's significant, but there's much more that needs to be done to be able to combat CCP influence within the United States. I'm really honored that we have several Taiwanese representatives here today, both representatives from Taiwan as well as Taiwanese Americans, who can talk about the threats that we face from this Communist Party and from their attempts to exert influence, not just in the United States, but really throughout the rest of the world. And so I'm going to invite Director General Chi to come up and say a few things.
you, Governor. Governor DeSantis and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are here to witness Governor DeSantis signing the two important bills, which have again brought the issue to our attention. The negative influence of China is not only a threat to Florida, it's also a threat to Asia and to the world. Taiwan has been fighting against the threat of China for a long time. We are very pleased that more and more friends in the world have noticed the issue and have joined us. As you may know, China has used its economic influence to undermine the national interests of many countries. Even in the critical situation of COVID-19, China is still trying to use vaccines to influence some countries to sever diplomatic ties with Taiwan. On the contrary, the U.S. bipartisan congressional delegation visited Taiwan yesterday to discuss U.S.-Taiwan relations, regional security, and other significant issues of mutual interest. Would like to take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks to the United States for donating 750,000 COVID-19 vaccine doses to Taiwan. Taiwan shared with the United States such common values as freedom, democracy, respect for human rights, the rule of law, and a market-based economy. Taiwan is also an important trading partner and reliable export market for the U.S. in almost every major sectors. Based on the shared values and common interests, the Taiwan-U.S. relations will continue to flourish well into the future. On this beautiful day, I wish all of you good health, happiness, and success. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Yale Huang.
Thank you, Governor DeSantis. Director General Xi. My name is Yale Huang. I'm the president of Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce in Miami. So with the bills Governor will be signing today, as a resident of Florida and a business owner and business people in Florida, it's very important for us to for these bills to come into place to make.
I heard from him Monday, and he picked up my brother and sister, I think, Tuesday.
The investigator wanted to keep Colin talking, and he did.
So what is Colin opening up to you about?
Colin starts to talk about the family dynamic and how he believes that his father might be having some sort of mental issues or some sort of breakdown.
Like, I've been kind of worried about him for, like, stuff's just been freaking me out because he's...
Then, the investigator asked him directly, what was in the garbage?
Madeline Wu.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning, everybody. And my name is Madeline, and I've been in the United States for over 50 years. And I was born in Taiwan and raised in Taiwan. And I wanted to share some of my experience. When I was in Taiwan, everybody
worked. The boys admitted something big. They'd been at their dad's house the day before. And listen to this.
Anything you need to tell me about?
Well, there's a lot of blood in the basement, and I was worried that, you know, something had happened.
And there's a lot of blood in the basement.
Yeah.
They just placed themselves at the scene of the crime. And when the investigator opened up those garbage bags,
on people, instead they give to the whole world, and they try to control the whole world to become a communist. And I think, especially, you know, like every day what we have, all the goods we buy is from China. And my personal experience is my daughter just got some bottle sterilizer and the bottle warmer. And they only last for 1 year, only for one child to use. And when we're going to have the second child, we had to buy a new one. And this material is, don't worry about how much CO2 was emitted, but you had to use all the energy, all the material, and they're going to create all the landfills. So, for instance, like if you have 5 kids, and then we had to buy 5 sets. So they become very ridiculous. And then China making all those non-lasting, not durable goods, and then making all the monies. And now what happened is they funding all the money to the world. They want to control the world, control to what government just said, all the education, research, and all the athletics, everything, entertainment, and even the media. Currently, like the New York Times and like CNN, they are just like communist Chinese talking. So this is a very important issue and to our concern. And another thing is they don't have too much ethics, because I'm the professional engineer in Florida. I run a consultant business, and I can see all those professionals, their ethic is not as good as us. So that's why they think stealing is nothing. And that's what we have to worry about. And this bill, I hope, can stop some of this. Thank you.
All right. And I mean, she makes a good point about, people getting all this stuff from China now. When COVID hit, there was an unprecedented, and a lot of it was driven obviously by the hysteria and the panic, but there was an unprecedented demand spike for things like masks and all kinds of PPE and all these things. And it turns out we get almost all of it from China. And China started clamping down. They didn't want to necessarily do it. So, I mean, I remember being on the phone, talking to these executives, trying to figure out what we could do. And every governor, the federal government, they were all doing it. But it's just a lesson. Why would we want all this stuff being made in China? And we need to have more of this made in the United States. And if we're able to do that, I think that's much better for our national security. It's also better for jobs in this country. Lieutenant Governor Jeanette Nuñez.
Good morning. It's great to be here with our legislative leaders and our Taiwanese friends. As you know, the cultural and economic ties between Florida and Taiwan are extraordinarily strong, and under this governor, he's going to continue to make sure that they remain strong. So thank you again for being here. Obviously, you've heard from the governor in terms of all of the issues that we have seen here in South Florida. He mentioned the Confucius Institute in Miami-Dade College, something that China used in order to provide and indoctrinate the students with this narrative that is contrary to what we believe here in Florida. And we're going to make sure that that only does not happen. It will never happen in the future. These programs, the use of teaching of Chinese language and culture was a tool to expand their political influence. And I'm thrilled that this governor is going to stand strong along with our legislative leaders to refuse that happen ever again here in Florida. As you know, awareness and vigilance will make it much more difficult for our adversaries to continue to propagate their narrative, and the CCP will not be here in Florida. We will not allow them to use our universities, our corporations as a tool to further their agenda. And so with that, I'm thrilled that the governor is going to be signing these bills today. I'm thrilled that all of our legislative leaders are here in support of these very important issues to continue to ensure that Florida is the home of the free.
Okay. Chris Sprouse.
Thank you, Governor. It's great to be with you today. Great to be with Lieutenant Governor Nuñez, Senator Diaz, members of our House delegation. And here we are talking about foreign influence of the Chinese Communist Party and its influence in Florida. And people who might be watching may think to themselves, well, why does this matter to a family who lives in Hialeah or Clearwater or Pensacola? Here's why. Because that foreign influence isn't just used to influence political leaders. It isn't just used to influence policy like the One China policy to the detriment of Taiwan. It isn't just used to disinvite speakers at our universities like the Dalai Lama. It is used to go into our research institutions and to steal from Florida taxpayers, to steal our hardworking intellectual property, to bring it back to China so that they can use that against American researchers, that they can use that against American businesses and beat America on the world stage. And that's what today is all about. That's why it matters to those families. And this started about 2 years ago when the Florida House of Representatives launched an investigation stemming from Moffitt Cancer Center when 4 researchers were found to have undisclosed, inappropriate relations with the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government. Because of those relationships, we uncovered all kinds of information, but we realized something more important, that it wasn't just limited to Moffitt Cancer Center. It was at the University of Florida where there were university researchers who had undisclosed relationships. One of them was indicted recently by federal officials. But even when the employees of the University of Florida were looking into that incident to find out the depth and scope of these inappropriate relationships, their computers and their network were cyber attacked by the Chinese Communist Party. At the University of Central